joined now by our Washington Bureau Chief Craig Gilbert to talk about the big day in Washington where the health care vote is coming to a head. Craig, can you give us a quick update on where this stands? Is the vote still scheduled today? Do the Republicans feel they have the votes and so forth?
Well, nothing is sure right now. There's a mad scramble for votes. It's really complicated because the House has to decide what kind of legislation can be not only passed politically in the Senate, but can meet the Senate rules, which are kind of arcane. And so the more desperate they get, the more willing they are to kind of pass a bill that they know is not going to get through the Senate, and the Senate will have to change. But then there's this sort of push-pull with moderates and conservatives in the House, where the conservatives, the hard right, has made such demands of changes in the bill that they risked that they're going to start losing moderates and even some mainstream conservatives. So that's the vice they're in right now. And part of this is going to have to do with the ability of Donald Trump to sway some of the people in the House Freedom Caucus, which is the conservative wing of the House Conference.
Yeah, so how, though, do they thread that needle, which you were just sort of referencing? Because some of the things that the most conservative members want are things that would violate Trump's campaign pledges to maintain, the pre-existing conditions and other aspects. Right. And then the moderates, you'll lose them and vice. I mean, how do you get that done and keep a bill that, or is it just pass anything today and move on?
That's why this is so hard, because threading the needle in the House is different from threading the needle in the Senate. And you can satisfy all these conservatives, maybe, and try not to lose vital moderates in the House. But then it goes to the Senate, and the center of gravity is not as far to the right. And there's no way the Senate will pass a bill probably that meets muster from the House Freedom Caucus in the House. So this is why this is proving so difficult to do. There really isn't a consensus among congressional Republicans about what to replace Obamacare with.
So if the vote comes up today and if it fails, who do you think takes the blame? Is it Donald Trump for not doing enough, or Paul Ryan for not managing the measure to get it through? Who takes the blame?
Well, there'll be a lot of finger pointing to go around. I mean, I think probably the Paul Ryan camp could end up sort of pointing the finger at recalcitrant House conservatives. How can you, if the bill fails in the House, the charge will be, this is our one chance to repeal Obamacare, and you blew it by making the perfect the enemy of the good. People will point to Paul Ryan and his leadership, and there may be the nightmare scenario for Republicans is if the Ryan camp and the House leadership and the White House start blaming each other. I mean, it's been a pretty impressive accomplishment so far politically for Ryan to keep Donald Trump on board, because they both have a common interest in getting this thing done. But if it blows up on both of them, that's really going to test their solidarity, which really is a recent phenomenon. It wasn't there during the campaign, so there's plenty of potential for cracks in that alliance.
Yeah, so let's look very briefly at the other side. So if it passes today, who gets the credit? Or is it just a short-term credit because we still have to get it passed through the Senate?
Well, it's a provisional victory. I don't think there'll be too many victory dances yet, because everybody knows the numbers in the Senate are really daunting. I mean, there are only 52 Republicans in the Senate. There are big parts of this bill that can't survive a filibuster and have to be passed. There are parts of what they want to do in the end that they need 60 votes, but there are other parts where they may just need 50. But even then, they can't afford to lose more than 2 Senate Republicans. And you've got, a core of 3 or 4 Republicans on the hard right, like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, who've been saying all along they don't like this. But then you've got a larger number of senators who are either moderates or more mainstream conservatives who've expressed a lot of reservations. Even Ron Johnson, who's been railing against Obamacare ever since he first campaigned for the Senate, was bracing in his criticism of the House bill a couple days ago here in Washington.
All right, and finally, let's talk about Paul Ryan in particular and what he has at stake in today's vote. You have a story that ran this morning and is available online that looks at just that. But he's talked about it being the opposition party for years. Now the Republicans are the governing party. He's got to show that he can get it done, right? To herd the cats.
He does.
And get something through.
This is the first great test of his speakership in a period of unified Republican rule. This is like the golden opportunity all these Republicans say they've been waiting for and working toward. And if they can't deliver on the first, not only the first item in their agenda, but the item in which everything else depends, the thing they've been running on for years, but the whole rest of their agenda is sort of constructed on the edifice of Obamacare repeal. They need the numbers, the budget cut, the tax cuts they get out of Obamacare, this Obamacare repeal bill, to make tax reform work down the road, to make their budget process work. So there's a lot of wreckage politically and also legislatively for Republicans if this goes down.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update, Craig, and we'll have more to follow on that one as it makes its way through the system. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, stay tuned.